The American dream. This idea, this belief, this concept that we hear so often, the American dream. Recently I asked Christina, I said, do you know anyone that's living the American dream in America? And she said, well, billionaires are. No, I said, no. Do you know anyone in America that is living the American dream? And her response was the same response that I've gotten from so many other Americans that are living in America. They cannot definitively say they know someone or they themselves are living the American dream. They may be able to point to someone that has a lot of money, but the next thing they talk about is all of the stress, all of the tension, all of the burdens that money has brought on that person because they have to maintain that money, because they have to secure that lifestyle. They have to secure that money. They're afraid that someone is going to take that money from them. They're afraid they're going to not have enough of that money. And so this idea that America, that through hard work, determination, and taking advantage of the opportunities presented in the U.S. can lead to prosperity, can lead to health, wealth, and happiness, the essential elements of the American dream. This concept is something that most Americans will never achieve in America. Now, I really emphasize this part about in America because you know that we achieved financial independence and we retired early and we decided to leave America. In fact, we live here in Portugal and we lived here for almost 5 years. And in the time that I have been here in Portugal, the only people that I know that are living the American dream, that are Americans, are living here in Portugal. That's incredible to me. They have discovered something that most Americans have not yet realized, that this concept that is so unachievable in their own country is more attainable in another country. And I'm not just talking about it from a money perspective. Don't get it twisted and think that I'm talking about because you have money and you live abroad, you can live the dream. No, there's so many more elements to this. The biggest piece for Americans that move outside of America is the peace of mind. And that's something that you cannot put a price tag on. And I think is a big part of truly living the American dream. And so in this video, I really want to break down how Americans are living the American dream outside of America because of things like their economic situation, their housing, their healthcare, their peace of mind, safety, all of these things that are so much more better in other countries, and Americans that move abroad are realizing this. But before we go any further, let's define what this American dream is. Really, it's the inherent belief that through hard work, determination, and taking advantage of the opportunities presented in the U.S., any individual, regardless of their background, their starting point, can achieve a fulfilling and prosperous life, leading to personal and financial stability and even abundance. It is a dream that is centered around contentment and a lasting happiness. That definition, I love that definition because as you dig deeper into it, you realize that so many elements of it are challenging for most Americans to meet. Let's talk about the first part of it. The first part of the definition is that through hard work, an individual can achieve financial success. Hard work in America does not equal success. There are so many people that have multiple jobs, that are working 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. And just because they're working harder doesn't mean that that's going to equate to success. In fact, many of these people continue to stay in the same socioeconomic cycle for generations to come because it's not about how hard you work, but rather it's about who you know in America. I mean, you could even be an American that has a great business idea in America and you find it so challenging to just get started with that idea because there are so many roadblocks or gatekeepers keeping you from pursuing your business dreams. Now, on the other hand, we know of so many Americans that have moved abroad and have used that same hard work and innovation that they had in the US to start a business abroad. Whether it's a clothing line, a restaurant, whatever the case may be, most Americans find it a lot easier to go to an emerging market, to go to a place where their product or service is not already offered or saturated, and to start something new. They've also realized that the barrier to entry from a financial standpoint and from a regulatory standpoint is much more lower. There aren't as many gatekeepers stopping you from creating your business. In fact, you will find that you are embraced for the ideas and the opportunities that you are bringing. The next element of the American dream that is so challenging is this idea of stability. Now, for most people, stability equates to housing, having a home that you can call your own, home ownership. And if you know what housing is like in America, you know that it's becoming less and less attainable for people to own their own homes. And it's because of soaring property prices in the US that have pushed home ownership out of reach for so many and saddling others with a considerable amount of debt. Now, on the other hand, if you look at home ownership in other countries, you'll find that there's a higher proportion of people that own homes. You will find that prices are much more affordable, and so it's more attainable for people to move abroad and find stability when it comes to home ownership. If you look at our situation, you know that we bought a beautiful home on the Silver Coast of Portugal. The ideal American dream home. It was large. We had land, fruit trees. We had room to spread our wings. It was our sanctuary. But there is another thing about home ownership in the US that not a lot of people talk about. That even after you do attain that home, you are still not happy, secure, and stable in that home. And this brings me to the next challenge, keeping Americans from achieving the American dream. And it is safety and peace of mind. You could have the most fabulous house in America, in the best neighborhood, but you are not safe and you are not secure in that home. Because unfortunately, crime in so many cities is at an all-time high. And it's the people with the best homes that tend to be the best targets when it comes to crime. And this is an unfortunate thing to have to say, but this is a reality in the US. And so if you do own that home with a white picket fence with a huge yard that's sitting on a hill, you are a sitting duck. And this issue with crime and safety and feeling safe in your own home is something that many people that live abroad do not have to deal with. In particular, here in Portugal, you can have a beautiful home and not have to worry about home invasions, people sticking you up as you walk outside your door, waking up to someone doing something in your house. You don't have to deal with those same type of issues because it is not as prevalent as it is in the US. And so this one particular issue of crime and safety is probably the number one reason why most Americans leave the US and why they feel so safe and secure in so many other countries. I mean, I can sit down with my American friends, and as we start to have these conversations about our lives back in the US, I hear a lot of trauma in their voices. I've heard about home invasions, car break-ins, just every imaginable thing that you could think of, these people were dealing with in the US. And here in Portugal, they are so grateful to be in an environment like this where they don't have to deal with those types of things. That alone is priceless. And if you can live life with that feeling, with that peace of mind, that is a dream. The next challenge is education. And in America, there is nothing more prized than an education. That is a big element of living the American dream, obtaining an education for yourself or your children, going to the best schools so that they can do better than you because they were able to obtain an amazing education. Unfortunately, an education doesn't get you as far as it used to. In fact, the cost of education now is setting people back rather than moving them forward. And then there is the other issue about access to education. When your kids are in elementary school or in high school, their access to education depends on what neighborhood they live in. And if you aren't living in the best neighborhoods, it's more than likely that your kids are not going to get the best education. Now, what we have discovered is that by moving abroad, our children have had access to amazing education in the public sector and in the private sector. And so we know so many families that have come here with children, and they have seen their children struggle in the US and thrive here in Portugal because of the educational system. And there are so many reasons why their children are thriving, but there's one in particular that I have noticed, especially when it comes to my children. It's the fact that they're able to go to school and there's no drama at school. Now, I have teenagers, and when I was a teenager going to school in the US, there was always some sort of issue at school. Either people were fighting, kids were bringing guns to school, just all type of madness. Now, on the other hand, our children here haven't had to deal with any of those issues. And a lot of that has to deal with the culture of Portugal. It's not a culture of aggression. It's not a culture of violence. It's a culture that is based upon community, that is based upon harmony, and is really great at compromise. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Portuguese people get into it on the street in what would be a complete road rage incident in the US. But you can see them on the street, have an argument, throw their hands up and just say, well, let's agree to disagree, and they both walk the other way. No one gets hurt. And so it's no wonder that you see adults like this, because if they came up in the same schooling system that our kids are coming up in, they're going to have the same interactions when they get older. No drama. The next challenge is healthcare. I could talk for days about all of the challenges that Americans have with healthcare, but that really keeps Americans in a state of anxiety, in a state of instability, because they never know when the next medical catastrophe could ruin their life. Just the other day, I met someone that was moving here to Portugal because their biggest fears in the US was medical bankruptcy. Now, here in Portugal, because healthcare is universal, people are not going to be surprised by a medical bill. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. My daughter spent 2 days in a hospital here in Portugal. When they released her from the hospital, our bill was $0. Now, as an American, when you leave the hospital, you are going to be hit with some sort of hefty bill that you can't even calculate. It is always a surprise. And this brings me to the last point that keeps most Americans from living the American dream. Now, you can go through life in America and you can do everything right. You can save, you can invest, you can buy a beautiful home, you could have a wonderful job, and you can get to the end of your life and lose it all. Because in America, it's almost like you are playing in a casino. You may have been doing all of these things right. You may be on a roll, but at the end of your life, America is always going to get something from you. Whether it is taking care of you in your old age and the expenses for that type of care, America is going to want your house. They're going to want your annuity. They're going to want your retirement accounts to support you at the end of your life. And so many Americans get to the end of their life and they have nothing to show for it because of how the American system is set up. Now, whether it's through taxes, through healthcare, through someone just suing you out of nowhere, all of these things, it's not about if they will happen, but rather when they will happen. And so that's why, for me, America can sometimes feel like a casino that you're living in. And so in conclusion, I know that the idea of the American dream can sound so appealing. It's really what keeps Americans moving forward. It's what keeps them pushing. This idea of working harder, putting in your hours, being resourceful, being innovative, and in the end, you will get what you deserve. You will get prosperity. You will get contentment. You will get happiness. Unfortunately, that is not what's going to happen to so many Americans. And it is really, really unfortunate. And so I offer this video to you as food for thought so that you don't go into this idea of the American dream with your eyes closed. Go into it wide open and recognize that if you are going to pursue the American dream, these are the challenges that you will be faced with in America. And you should also realize that for generations, people have been migrating around the world in pursuit of a better life. And so if you find that your life in America isn't leading to this American dream, maybe it's time for you to immigrate somewhere else. And so if you've liked this video, please do us a huge favor. Subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and join the journey.